Right, here we go. It is Tuesday, July 25th, right around 9 p.m. Thanks for joining me. Hey, we're going to talk about severe weather. It has been a very little in the way of severe weather so far this year, and especially this summer here in the upper Midwest, but that's going to change tonight. I'm going to show you why. Now, this report, by the way, is brought to you by American Waterworks in Rochester, my good friends there at American Waterworks. In fact, they just did some work for me a little bit ago. Yes, they deal with water issues and foundation issues, just any type of exterior issues like that around your house. Give them a holler there in Rochester. Of course, they service all of southern Minnesota, western Wisconsin, so northern Iowa. So anyway, give them a holler at American Waterworks. Actually, they're in Fargo, North Dakota too, so probably the Dakotas and northern Minnesota too they service. All right, thank you, American Waterworks. All right, here we go. Hey, let's take a look at the satellite loop now. This is the infrared satellite loop, and I just wanted to quickly show you the explosion now of thunderstorms. This is the genesis of what is likely going to be a large mesoconvective system. And you can see it developing right here, southeastern North Dakota and then eastern South Dakota, as this activity moves east and then southeast. I think you're going to see a huge complex of storms develop over southern Minnesota as we go through time. Look at this beautiful looking visible satellite imagery. And a couple of things I want you to focus on. Not hard to pick out where these massive cumulonimbus clouds, these are thunderheads that are popping up and extending high up in the atmosphere. This thunderstorm here in extreme southeastern North Dakota is extending 50 to 55,000 feet up in the atmosphere. It has turned severe. I'll show you that here in just a little bit. And this thing is impressive over east central South Dakota now. That is a 60,000 plus foot top thunderstorm. It apparently has at least a potential tornado in that storm. And as I had mentioned, as these storms move like this towards southern Minnesota, they're going to develop a mesoconvective system. In fact, we might also get to it right now. Check it out. This is the severe weather potential. I put this out yesterday, actually, but it's coming true now as we speak. I'm expecting these storms to move in a fashion like this here across southern Minnesota along a warm front. And if you're anywhere from I-94 corridor, which is right about here, anywhere from the I-94 corridor on south, you need to be paying attention overnight tonight to radar and your severe weather warnings from your local outlets, because I think it's going to be a line of perhaps a squall line of thunderstorms that move east and southeast through southern Minnesota with some impressive dynamics associated with it. Here's the radar, by the way. I'm zoomed in into the Aberdeen radar, or actually Sioux Falls radar right now. This is the tornado in east central South Dakota that has gone severe. This cell is likely going to move to the east and perhaps a little southeast. It's going to join up probably with these cells here in North Dakota. Let's focus on them a little more because they're probably the ones that we need to be more concerned with. And we'll go to Twin Cities radar. We'll put this into motion. And you're going to see what these storms are doing. They're increasing in intensity. And it's pretty important here because we're looking quite a ways out. Look at this. This radar out of Chanhassen is looking out about 165 miles out, and it's picking up these thunderstorms way out in southeastern North Dakota. So as these storms move east and southeast near and south of the I-94 corridor, I think this whole area here of southern Minnesota needs to be on the lookout, and then eventually the Rochester area as we get towards the morning hours tomorrow, as these storms, just impressive ones now, have exploded over eastern South Dakota, eastern, southeastern North Dakota, and eventually Minnesota. Hey, here's one of the reasons why we're expecting these storms to move in this fashion right here, is that these are the precipitable water values, or at least the moisture, the intense or high-end moisture in the atmosphere. And where you see these purples and pinks, that's high-end moisture. But look at this. Central and northern Minnesota, northwestern Wisconsin, not much moisture at all in the atmosphere. So there's a gradient, a moisture gradient that has developed across western and southern Minnesota. And as this moisture gradient tries to push northeast, it's going to develop a even tighter gradient the way it appears right near the I-94 corridor. And that's the reason why we're expecting the majority of the thunderstorm activity to develop and continue to track into that area there of southern Minnesota. Now, when we look at Cape values, this is the potential energy in the atmosphere. You're kind of seeing the same thing. Look at this gradient in Cape values across southwestern and southern Minnesota, and it's usually along this gradient of Cape values is where storms would develop and then again move east and southeast near and south of the I-94 corridor. Now, looking at the satellite, this is the future satellite now from the rapid refresh guidance, and take a look at this. Look at these storms blowing up overnight tonight. Impressive storms by about midnight tonight over much of southern Minnesota, and those storms continue to track east and southeast towards the I-90 corridor in southern Minnesota and into the Twin Cities as we head towards the midnight hour tonight, and eventually into Wisconsin, where they will lose some of their punch, I think, at that time. Now, future radar from the rapid refresh guidance kind of shows the same thing. Here comes those storms, and I wanted you to focus on this area here of southeastern North Dakota, where these storms, you can see them here. This rapid refresh is picking them up pretty nice right now. Watch what it does with these storms. It moves them east so that by right around the 1 a.m., you can see the timestamp up here, by 1 a.m. tomorrow morning, they should be approaching or in the Twin Cities metro and Mankato metros in southern Minnesota. And like I had mentioned, riding near and south of the I-94 corridor. And then eventually, these storms are going to make their way towards the Rochester area by about the 2 or 3 a.m. time frame tomorrow morning. These storms are going to be racing across southern Minnesota by that time period, and eventually they'll be out of our hair as we get towards the sunrise hours tomorrow. Now, how much rain could fall from these? Well, of course, with summertime thunderstorms, you don't want to put too much confidence into these estimated or potential rainfall totals here from the computer model guidances, but long story short, about the southern third to southern half of Minnesota can expect significant rain here out of these storms and into portions of northern Iowa. Again, this is the rapid refresh guidance, but if we even put the NAM 3K computer model guidance up there, and this is hot off the press, the NAM 3K, look at where it's developing the precipitation as we head into this evening over southwestern Minnesota. It has a void here in southeastern Minnesota, but I think that's overdone a little bit. I think this area of southern Minnesota is really under the gun here, and the European computer model guidance has latched onto this too. Much of southern Minnesota should be seeing significant rains. Of course, it's going to be in pockets, but I don't think there's any doubt that a good chunk of southern and western Minnesota is going to receive significant rains here as this complex, and let's just get back to it right now, as this complex here over southeastern North Dakota and now pushing into west central Minnesota continues to move southeast, and then it'll eventually continue to veer southeast even more towards the Twin Cities and Rochester and Mankato areas here as we go through the nighttime hours. So be aware, be prepared, and make sure that you're up to date on the latest watches and warnings that are going to be coming out over the next 3 to 6 hours. All right, everyone, thanks for joining me.